running the code by our test class, we should not use the see all data. Because when we use the see all data keyword, and if it is equal to true, usually we put this one inside the parentheses, then what's happening, like it is gonna be able to see all your database. It's gonna be able to reach all your database. Whatever records you have in your database, it is gonna be open up to your test class. That is gonna make your test class, it's gonna try to handle all the records. And this is not practical. That's why they say we should not use the see all data keyword while we are writing down the test classes. And Sanjay mentioned that one yesterday also. While we are testing our triggers and batch classes, if you guys remember Salesforce documentation, it was also mentioning that we need to as a bulk testing data, we need to create at least 20 records. Testing should be done for the entire scenario, which means, like yesterday we talked about this, and we said we need to think about all the positive and negative scenarios. We need to cover that. And also we need to cover is there any restricted user, right? We need to think all the scenarios, and we try to cover all the positive and negative scenarios here.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So I remember he mentioned create at least 20 records for the test, but those should be different, I assume, because if we use the for loop and create 20 records in one loop, those all 20 of them will be with the same same records, nothing will be different.
No.
Versus we do maybe 5, 5, 5 or 10 different.
Not exactly, because let me show you one of the test class what we did. So we call this one creating a bulk data, right? Bulk records. So when we use the for loop, instead of 5, if we put 20 here, it's going to create 20 different records, and they are going to be different. They are going to have different record IDs. And to make them differentiate from the name, also we are putting here +i, which means if I is 1, it's going to be test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4. It's going to go up to this top limit. So even we are changing the name, should we change, or do we have to change the name? No, you can put as the same name, but to see when you create, of course, you are not going to be able to see it if you are creating inside the test class. But if you think if you create this one from the anonymous windows, you should be identify them they are different records. And even if their names are same, if we don't use the I here, still you are going to have the different record IDs for each and every record.
Yes. Okay. For this case, yes, it makes sense.
Is it explaining your question, or it is something different?
No, it explained my question, but we also did an active for the next one, active C yes and active C no. I don't know if you did it that way, but we had that use case, we had that test when we used yes and no for two different for loops. So I was thinking,
I think I did that one.
so I was thinking to be able to test, like,
it is true here, but on the other example, I used false.
so I was actually, yeah, there it is. The active C, yes and no. So I was thinking to, like, depending on the use case, I guess, depending on the handler class conditions, then we do this.
We can do this, but it is not gonna affect the record IDs.
Mhm.
Like, even if we say like all the actives fields are yes here on the first 5 records, and the second 5 records, even if we say no, they are gonna all have the different record IDs inside the Salesforce.
Mhm.
Because record IDs are unique for each and every record. And this is gonna be like, why did we do this? Because if I'm not wrong, if I'm mistaken, just correct me. But this use case was about like if the active field is yes, and if somebody tried to delete that record, it is gonna prevent the deletion
Mhm.
on the account, right? So why did we try like 2 different way here? Because we said we can see all the results under the one test method instead of creating another test method and just putting the no's over there. We can do that one also.
Mhm.
But instead of that, we did like this. But in this case, we know that if we try to delete this one with the delete operation only, like DML operation, if we just use the delete ACC list here, in that way, we are not going to be able to. Why? Because just because of the active field is yes, these 5 records will not be able to delete it because of the trigger,
Mhm.
this 5. But this 5, they will be deleted because of the no.
Yes.
Because the biggest, I can say, like the criteria here on this use case, the active field. That is why we are expecting some of the like records will be failed. That is why Sanjay thought that we can use the try catch block because we are expecting some like failures here.
Mhm.
But then he noticed that we are doing the delete operation. That's why he said, instead of using the try catch, we should use the database class to
Partial.
success for the partial success and partial failure.
Yes.
That's why we type this
Mhm.
and we make this one false to get a like 5 records pass, and the other 5 will be failed. That's why like we made 2 different lists and then we just compare the values. We were expecting like 1 here. This 1, it is coming from like when we query all the IDs which is inside that ACC ID list, 0 index ID. So we should have them if it is yes, because it should not be deleted.
Mhm.
And we compare this one with the other one, which is right here. Updated ACC size should be 1, because we should have some value, because it is not going to be deleted because of the active field is yes.
Mhm.
And even if, according to this condition, even if we get any error, we would like to see this, the opposite of the expected.
Yes. Okay.
Does it make more sense?
Yes, yes. So this is because the active C, yes and no, there are two different lists going on. That's why we had two different
Yes.
for loop.
And that is why we use that. And
Mhm.
it is just because of that, it is about the use case.
Yes.
Because in our use case, I don't remember which one was it.
I think
Description,
it was maybe
prevent deletion. This one.
deletion. Yep.
Account records cannot be deleted if active is yes. That's why active is so much important. And active can have, I believe it is a pick list, and it has two value only, yes or no. So we are just trying to cover all the condition. If it is yes or if it is no. If it is yes, we just, how can I say, validate our expectation with the assert equal. And also we are checking the no condition here. So we are covering all the scenarios here.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we talk about the best scenarios, entire scenarios, the code coverage. Okay. Yesterday also I mentioned that, like, for example, Chilam was doing some like deployment for the production, and they were just moving the data from one sandbox to another one, or from one sandbox, the last sandbox, to the production. So what's happening here? Like, some of the sandboxes, they have the same copy of the product, which means they have the same exact data inside the sandbox. But some of them, for example, like dev sandbox or test sandbox, like they might have some like small data inside. In that case, code coverage can be different from the production, because production is like having all the data. But sandbox, it is possible they can have less data. That's why code coverage can be different in between sandbox and production. Nothing to worry about it, but if you get any questions, something like this, don't be surprised. They would like to hear that. It is possible it can be same with the production. In that case, the code coverage will be same. But if the sandbox has less data, then code coverage will be different than the production. There are lots of annotation and methods inside the test classes. So you can hear them, like they can ask you directly, like, what is the isTest annotation? Where we are using the isTest annotation? We are using the isTest annotation beginning of the test class, which means we are using for the classes, and we are using it for the methods. Why we are using this? To test our classes, or to create our test class and check our code if it is running as expected or not. Because if it is running as expected, at the end of the code, we are checking with the system.assert to see it, if it is running as expected or not.
I guess if we don't use @isTest annotation, we don't have run test option on the right, upper right side.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yes.
that's correct. Okay. There are a couple more questions about this, like what is see all data if it is equal to true, like how you can define the see all data annotation. If you are using this like this way, you are granting to your test classes to see and access all your data in your organization. That is why it is not recommended. You can understand from the name, when you use see all data equal to true, then you are gonna be able to reach all the data. You can access all data, which means you can reach your database. And then it is explaining that the question should be like why they are suggesting us to don't use this. Because if any class, any test class with the isTest see all data annotation, this annotation will be applied and they are gonna be able to reach everything in your database. When this annotation is used, it is gonna open up the data access to your database. Basically, I am just saying the same thing. It is gonna allow your test class to access for your database. But even if you use false on this method, it doesn't restrict your organization data access for that method if the containing class has already been defined with the see all data true. So what does it mean? Once you use this annotation, after then, even if you make this one false, it's not gonna change anything. It is gonna be able to reach that data, all data later on. That is why they don't suggest it. Sometimes if you remember, like about the database class, we were saying that, not this one. In here, if we make this one true, there is no difference between DML insert or DML delete in this condition and database.delete. But when we use false, everything is changing here. But in here, it says, if you start with this see all data true, after then, even if you make it false later on in your code, it is gonna be able to see, it's gonna be able to access all data in your org. That's why, like, we should not use this annotation. Why it is recommended to avoid this? Same thing. When it is true, it exposes all data from your database to your test class. It is recommended not to use as the code coverage of for our Apex class or trigger. They will now be dependent on the data which is present in our org, and depending upon that, code coverage may change. So this one. So basically they are asking the same question. They are asking the same question in a different ways. But they are expecting to hear from you. That is not recommended to use this one, because if we use this, we are gonna be able to access all data in the database. And even if we make it later on, like this condition to false, we are gonna still have access for the all data in the org. Like when you use this one true, who has access for the database? Your test class, because you are using this one inside your test class. Any question?
No.
No.
I'm good.
Okay. So why do we need to create a separate test class? Like, what is the purpose? Because what we did here, for the test, we created another class. Why do we need this? There are some reasons. If you guys remember, while we were talking about the difference between like governor limits in between the synchronized and asynchronized, we mentioned that synchronized ones, they have like 6 megabyte limit, and asynchronized one, it is like 12 megabyte. When you separate the test class, if you just create any like separate test class, when you do that, it is gonna be don't count against the. It is like when we are talking about yesterday about the is test annotation, we said if we have any is test annotation, that will be excluded from the code coverage. That is why it is gonna be like count. It is not gonna be count against our organization limit. So if I can find it, 259. I'm just gonna show you that limits right here. Total heap size for the synchronized, it is 6 megabytes. When you use is test annotation in your class by creating different class with the is test annotation, that's what we are doing. We are keeping our code don't hit the like governor limits, because this is not counted inside that 6 megabyte. This is excluded. Does it make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Is it the same like how we created the trigger class? Like for every object, we only create one trigger class. Are we doing the same thing for the test? Like one account handler trigger test, and we create different methods under it?
We can create more than one, but the ideal one, we can create only one test class.
Mm-hmm.
Inside that test class, if it is related to the same object I am talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, for example, for opportunity, we created
We need
test
another
class
one.
yesterday.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But the ideal one is to create a test class and differentiate them with the methods.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one. The other one is another method.
Yes.
So basically, we are doing the same thing what we were doing in the trigger.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It is giving more detail about this is test annotation. You can find inside these questions, like maybe you are gonna see like 4 or 5 times the same question is coming through with the different like explanations. What you can do, combine them, and you can like build up something. When somebody tell you anything, any question about the is test, you can just like say the same thing. You can do that. For that, some repeated answers here, you might just clear them out. But this is the most detailed one I can say. What is the considerations like while you are writing any is test annotation? We are using this one for the like test classes and test methods. This annotation can be private or public. So if we check this one, our class is public, our method is private. So we can use for both of them. And then it says that is test annotation must be top level classes. So as far as my understanding, it means that we should put this one top of the class. So it's supposed to come prior to your class name. And when we use this, so the same answer for the previous question, when we use the is test annotation, it is not gonna be against to our like limit, 6 megabyte limit for the Apex code. This is valid for the synchronized Apex code. And is test annotation, it cannot be interfaced or enums. I don't remember the enums right now, but I can just search it up because sometimes Sanjay used that one also.
May I ask you something, Mehmet Bey?
Yes, sure.
It's not about, it's not related to is test. Is there any megabyte limit for flows? I'm sure there is, but
Inside the flows, like we are not.
we shouldn't worry about it, maybe.
We should not, because the only thing I remember, like if we are uploading some stuff, we have like 256 kilobyte or megabyte limit as a governor limit. But that is different than the flows. And inside the flows, we are not inserting anything like as an attachment or something. But as a coding, we are not typing any code for the flows. We are typing code here. That's why like these limits will be applied. And if you think like 6 megabyte, it's not a huge number, but since we are just typing the code, and if you just think about like how much code we write down for the, just for the trigger handler class, almost 1,000 lines. Like
I think this is the longest one.
this is the longest one. Yeah. If you just add them up, we didn't write like more than 2,000. If
How
you
can we see
add up
maybe this account trigger handler, how much megabyte?
I
Is
don't
there
know.
any way to see?
I don't know, but I can search that one up.
Because when you talk about megabyte limit, I was thinking if some user or developer is gonna be over that megabyte limit, how is there any way to see or learn? Is he close to finish that limit
Close to the
or
limit.
not? Yeah.
Uh,
'Cause
for the triggers, we don't have too many options, so I can just check from here if it, I don't remember right now if it is like giving us or not, but API version size without comments. These are the size. These are should be like kilobyte. And
Or lane count?
I
'Cause-
don't think this is line because we just checked the like account trigger handler we checked. I believe it is longer than the account trigger, but I can check. Yeah, this is the whole account trigger. It is like 53 line, but in here it is just saying 895. And here you are currently using 79.551 characters of Apex code, excluding comments and isTest annotated classes, as you see, in your organization, out of an allowed 6 million characters. So they are checking the characters.
okay.
So the only way to reach, and if you are gonna delete your trigger, this is the only way to do it. So you cannot delete them over the developer console. But that's a good question because until this point, I never think about it, you know. And if you check the percentage, percent of Apex used 1.33%. And also you can create a new trigger from here. You can give the name, like you can put this like criteria here and select the fields from here. You can make it like visible only you or any user, or you can just assign it to group or users. This is extra, but
We never did anything like that.
yeah, we
And
didn't, but
didn't.
there is a way to do it. So I believe only 4 or 5 more left. So let me finish this. Okay, this annotation is different. Test setup annotation. So this one is, we are creating like a testing database. We are already doing that in here, our test class. What did we say? We need to like specify, like we need to create the test data first, then perform the DML operation and apply the assert to validate your result. There are 3 divisions, and the first division we are creating some test data, but sometimes what we are doing, each and every time what we did here, we, for this method, right? This is the method part. For this method, we created a test data. Then for this one, we created another test data. For the other method, we created another one. But sometimes what you can do, you can create a test data and you can use that test data inside the same class. So these are all inside the same test class. You can use the same test data. To be able to use that test data for each and every method you can create with the test setup annotation. Basically, you are creating a test database, or I can say test data. Then you can call and you can use that created records from each and every method inside the same class. What I am trying to say, I put an example here. For example, if we have a test class, it has 2 test methods, and each test method required 5 account records, which we did in the Sanjay's example. So without creating 5 records for each test method, we can create a method with the test setup annotation. Then we can create only 5, and then we can use them by using the SQL queries. We can call them and we can use them in a different methods. If we have, like, say, 4 test methods, we are going to be able to use that 5 account records inside the 4 different test methods if we use test setup annotation. That is something different. It might come up. While we are using this test setup method, what we need to consider, what do we need to remember? All database changes are rolled back at the end of the test, so you are not going to be able to see on the UI side. We cannot use this method on records that existed before the test executed. So we can just use this test setup, like while we are doing the testing, we are creating a data, we can just use for that one, only that portion. We cannot use it for the existing records. And same thing, we should not use the isTest see all data annotation here. What is the difference between test method and isTest annotation? We can use the isTest annotation for the test classes and test methods, and these are not counted for the code coverage. They are excluded. Test method keyword, we can just use for the test method. So for that one, I should give an example because we have never used that. Okay. If you check here, instead of writing down our test method, like instead of writing down our test method like this, we can write down like this way also, with the test method annotation. If we use the test method, we can just use it for the method. You can easily understand from the name. But if we are using isTest, we can use it for the class and we can use it for the method. If they ask the difference. These are tricky questions. That's why I'm just going over it. I think this is the last one. Test visible annotation. So sometimes what we are doing, we are making our method private, right? If we make that method private, there is no way we can call them from the outside of the class. But even they have the private, if we would like to reach this method from outside this class, we should use test visible annotation. This is another detail. I think that was it. Yeah, I'm not counting this. We already talked about this. So there are a couple different things like test visible, test setup, see all data true, these kind of stuff. We can ask during the class also to Sanjay. But in that way, we are covering the test class and Apex class in this week about the interview questions. I'm gonna share these as a document. I can share as a Word, or I can share the PPTs, whatever you want. I want you guys to review it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
were
Mary.
so patient.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Recording stopped.
See you.